Hey Bookaholics, welcome back to another video. Today I am bringing you some autumn recommendations. Throughout the last year, I have obviously read a ton of books, so I thought I would go through all of the books that I have read throughout 2025 that I think would make for good autumn recommendations. The way I intend to do this is basically I've got them by category. They're not quite by genre, but by category, and we'll just go through which ones I would recommend for the season. I've got quite a lot of books on here, so we're going to get straight into it. The first genre that I have is fantasy. Obviously, I am predominantly a fantasy reader. It's gone a little bit by the wayside in the last month, but I am mostly a fantasy reader, so it makes sense that I would have some fantasy recommendations. However, to try and make it autumn inspired was actually harder than I thought it would be, and I only have two on here that I think would work for autumn because I genuinely think that I haven't been reading as much dark fantasy, and that surprised me like when I went through it. So that's maybe something I need to remedy next year. I'm going to be reading more horror next year, so hopefully I can read some more dark fantasy too. But the two dark fantasies that I would recommend, the first one would be Gunmetal Gods by Zamil Akhtar. This one is a self-pub but rather popular epic fantasy. It's got like an eldritch horror vibe to it with the way that the monsters of this world work, and it is a Indian inspired epic fantasy series. In it we are following two parties. We are following one who is a man who seeks revenge for his daughter against this empire, and the other is a man who is set out to stop this invasion from happening against his people as a member of this empire. And I am really glad that I enjoyed this. This has been on my TBR for so long, and I do have the rest of the series, so I do plan on continuing this one. And yeah, I had a great time with it, and I would recommend. Like, it wasn't necessarily new favorite territory. I definitely enjoyed one POV more than the other, but it was a really good time, and I am excited to continue. The other epic fantasy that I have on here is A Dark Most Fair, which I read very recently. This is by L.M. Riviere, and I have not stopped talking about this since I picked it up. This one is a dark epic fantasy, and it has a historical fiction-y vibe to it. It has a fairy tale vibe to it. We've got fair folk in there. Overall, I had a great time with this one. In this story, we are following a young woman, and it starts out where she confesses that she murdered someone, that she is a murderer and she is a kinslayer, and there is no redeeming her. We hear that, and then we get to go back in time where we see how she came to be this murderer, and I really did appreciate it. I had such a good time with this book, and it really shocked me how much I enjoyed it. So I would highly recommend, if you want like a dark fairy tale that feels like an epic fantasy that also has like a little bit of politicking that you'd get from like historical fiction all thrown in there, highly recommend. Moving on to the next category, which is atmospheric. These are the ones that aren't horror but that are dark, like creepy, and yeah, they have that atmosphere to them nonetheless. So the first one I have on here is Seventh Bride by T. Kingfisher. This is one I actually loved by T. Kingfisher. I have read others that I have liked more, but I did enjoy it, and it did have some interesting elements to it. I just didn't connect emotionally the way I wanted to with as many characters as I was provided with. I think it could have been longer, which is odd because normally like with atmospheric ones you kind of want them to be quite quick. This one could have been longer. I could have sat with the characters for a lot longer and really gotten invested in them and got to know them a bit better, but that's not how this story went. But it is a fairy tale inspired one in which we have this woman who comes from like a poor area, and this man comes along and says that he's going to marry her, and he takes her away to be married, and once she gets there she realizes that he has multiple wives and that they are kind of being kept there, and it's got this dark atmospheric vibe to it that I really did appreciate. So the vibes are there. Not my favorite T. Kingfisher, but I'd still recommend you check it out. This was not quite so dark atmospheric, but it is like a slight monster fiction vibe to it. It's more like a quest story, but the protagonist is a monster, so I thought it would still work for this autumnal vibe that we've got going, and that is Green Teeth by Molly O'Neill. This was one that I actually read as part of my Coven buddy read that I have with some of my friends. This was the one that was picked by Rachel and is over on Rachel's channel, which I will leave linked, and it's also in a playlist that I have created for the Coven reads, so go check that out too. But I had a great time reading this one. It is a really fun book. There was a section in there that I did have a little bit of a problem with, which I elaborate more on in the vlog, but for the most part I think it was really well written. I love the messages around Jenny, and I really love Jenny as a character. I would just highly recommend, if you're looking for some British inspired mythology going on here, I would really recommend this one. Another one that I read recently was The Half Killed by Quenby Olson. This one is a romantic ish gothic mystery story. In this story, we are following a young woman who can see past the veil, and she doesn't want to, and she has even attempted to take her life because of it. However, she fails at taking her life, and after a long recovery is asked to aid this man with an investigation. I really loved the dynamic in here. I love the gothic vibes. I love the atmosphere that was conjured up in here. I had a great time with it. I love Quenby Olson's writing, and if you like Quenby Olson's writing but you want it to be more autumnal than you'd get maybe from Miss Percy, I would definitely recommend checking this one out. Another one that I have is After the Forest by Kel Woods. This is one that I read recently, and while this wasn't necessarily a new favorite, it was only really like a 3-star read. I can see why other people would like it. I think it was really well written. I just didn't engage with it on like any kind of depth, so I don't think it's going to necessarily be memorable. But if you're wanting like a fun read for like the duration of the book, you know, don't necessarily need it to stay with you, this was a good time. This is the story of Hansel and Gretel after the forest. So once they've left the forest and they've escaped the witch, Gretel escaped with the grimoire, and when they begin to fall on hard times, she begins to make gingerbread that is addictive, so that people keep coming back for more. However, people begin to grow rather suspicious of this girl who got lost in the forest and is now making very addictive gingerbread. So it's like the story of how we treat people who don't conform to our social standards. We also have the historical connotation of the way we treated witches during this time period, or women deemed witches during the time period, I should say. We also have interesting familial dynamics between Hans and Greta in here as well, and I just think that it was well handled. Like I said, I can't really fault any specific thing in the book, just that I don't think it's going to stay with me, but I did enjoy my time reading it. Another one that I have that is like horror adjacent but isn't horror is But Not Too Bold by Hache Pueyo. This is a novella that I read, and it is a bizarre novella. I'm not 100% sure how to talk about this one, but it is basically, we are following a young woman who has been hired to become a maid, like a housekeeper, and like a keeper of the keys of this mansion that is owned by this spider person. She's a woman who is arachnid-like, and we're also seeing her investigate what happened to her predecessor, as well as taking care of this spider lady. And then on top of that, we also have a blossoming romance. So a very bizarre book, absolutely bonkers, but I had a really good time with it. It was so well written. I definitely want to read more by this author. So well written. Could not fault the writing and the curiosity as well. Like the intrigue was just top tier. Very strange book. Again, have no idea how to talk about this book. I'm so glad that I've also talked to Esme about this, because she is just like me. I don't know how to talk about this book. It was weird, but it was great. So it's not just me, because Esme has got to be the most eloquent person I have ever met on the booknet. Like her reviews are impeccable. So the fact that she's like, no, I get you. It's like, okay, cool. It's not just me. Thank you. So yes, just go check it out. It's really short. It's like 100 pages or something. It's a fantastic time. Bizarre, but fantastic. Unless you're an arachnophobe, in which case, stay clear. And the last one I have for this category is Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. I had a fantastic time with this book. I love this book so much. I love Alex E. Harrow's writing. Just the way she can conjure atmosphere and the way that she can weave really heavy-handed plot points into a story and it not feel like you're being bashed about the face with it is fantastic. She's so subtle and nuanced, but at the same time, there is no room for error. There's no mistaking what her intended message for the story is, and I love that. So this is the story of a young woman who begins to work in this, what it seems like a haunted mansion in this town. She is the provider for her brother, who she is like the foster parent of, and she needs a job. So she starts working in this mansion, and then things begin happening and she begins to see why the mansion is haunted. The discussion in here is fantastic, and the discussions around community and culpability of community and generational trauma. There are so many things that are handled so well in here. I'd highly recommend. The atmosphere was beautiful. I would recommend. The next genre that I have is just outright horror. It's the season of horror. I actually haven't read that much horror this year though. Next year's horror year though. Next year is the year of horror. I will make up for this misdeed, I promise. I've read 3 horrors. One of them, however, is Satan Hides the Hook, and that is a sequel, and I can't really talk about it. Well, I can, kind of. This one's an alien horror. It's an alien invasion horror. It's an interesting one, but it is a sequel. And the first one is like a vampire horror. I would recommend you check out the series, but I would recommend that you do it in order, just so that the interpersonal relationships make a little bit more sense. But I had a great time with it. I would recommend you check it out. However, one that I can talk about a little bit more, we have Leech by Hiron Ennis. This one is a sort of eldritch / gothic horror. And we're following this person who needs to go investigate what is going on with this lord who may or may not be dead, who lives out in the countryside. No one's heard from him for a while. And he needs to go investigate this lord to see if he is alive and then what is going on, because some suspicious stuff is happening over in this lord's manor. That's all I need to say about it, but it is very creepy, very unsettling. I loved the vibes in it. It was like gothic vibes to go with the eldritchness of the horror that then also has like this investigative undertone going on as well. Fantastic time, would highly recommend. And the other one that I have is also by Lumen Reese, and that is There's Something Wrong in Hugo Creek. This one is a Western horror. Now, don't be deterred, I hate Westerns. If you know me, you know I don't like Westerns. Westerns are not my vibe. However, There's Something Wrong in Hugo Creek is a bit different. In this story, we are following a woman who is hellbent on revenge, something common in Westerns. However, it is because the son of the mayor, nephew of the sheriff, attacked her home and her family. Obviously, there's nothing that she can do about it except to take revenge in her own hands. However, while she's doing so, she also uncovers both a conspiracy and also something paranormal happening in this town. So you've got a lot of layers going on, and I think that they all intertwined really, really well. And I think that the horror elements throughout, coupled with the revenge plot, worked really well, because they would interact, but they didn't necessarily completely overlap in a way that I thought was just very poetic with the ending. I did really appreciate it. So for someone who doesn't like Westerns, if you're not normally a fan of Westerns, I would still recommend giving this one a go. The next genre that I have is paranormal. Now, I know that I've mentioned a couple of paranormals in here already. The Half Killed is paranormal, as is, I suppose there is a paranormal-ish element in both There's Something Wrong in Hugo Creek and also in Starling House. But these are the ones where paranormal is the dominant theme. The first one I have is Unkindness of Magicians, or the entire series, which is The Unseen World by Kat Howard. This one is one that I read because my friend Elise had a Takeover My TBR vlog, and this was one of the ones that she recommended. I had a great time with this series. It's a trial, like a mage's trial. It is about how power is distributed, and I really love trial stories like that. I think that is always something that I really enjoy reading. The way that we see the underworld and the paranormal world, and it's one of the few times that I don't mind big cities like London or New York being mentioned, because the sole purpose of them is specifically so that it's a place that's so big that these things would kind of go unnoticed, as opposed to it being character almost in its own right. So I had a great time with this series. We're following a young woman who has entered herself into this trial to become head mage, for want of a better word, if she wins this trial. She has ulterior motives. I'm really glad that Elise made me read these. They're ones that have been on my radar forever, and I'm really glad that I picked them up and actually read them. The next one that I have is another series, and that is the Witch's Compendium of Monsters series, with the first book being Foul Days by Genevieve Dimova. This one is a Slavic-inspired urban fantasy setting-ish. We have like two worlds that are separated by like this shadow veil thing. And so we have Chanagrad, which is where all of the monsters live, and you have the Foul Days at the beginning of every year, in which these monsters are able to kind of run loose through Chanagrad. We are following a monster hunter who is a witch, and she, to save herself, trades away her shadow. However, then she realizes that without her shadow she can get sick, so then she needs to go and retrieve her shadow. We also have like a murder mystery investigation section going on in here. She is also the ex of the Tsar of Monsters, for what that's worth as well, so there's that whole layer of complexity there as well when it comes to like power dynamics in a relationship and things. For the most part, I had a great time with this series. The first half of book one didn't quite grab me, and I wasn't sure I would love it, and then the second half, when the character work really begins to kick in, I had such a good time, and the second book I also really enjoyed. So I would highly recommend you check these out, and also that you persevere through the first half while it's setting stuff up. It is worth it. And the last of the paranormal ones that I have, I know that some people consider Angels and Demons paranormal, so I'll throw this in there, and that is Tread of Angels by Rebecca Roanhorse. This one is a Angels and Demons novella. In this story, we are following two sisters who have been raised by separate parents. So they have one parent who is an angel, their father is an angel, and their mother is a demon. And one sister does not have demon marks on her, and the other does. So the sister that does not have demon marks is raised by her father, and her other sister is raised by their mother. So they have very different upbringings, very different outlooks on life, and also they are treated very different within their society. However, then when the youngest sister sister is convicted of murder, the older sister, who has been raised with more privilege, decides to take it upon herself to prove her sister's innocence and to get her released. It's how far we will go for those we love and the morality of it, etc. I had a fantastic time with this. I'm very excited to read more by Rebecca Roanhorse having read this. I thought it was really, really well written. One of my favourite books of the month in which I read it, and I'd highly recommend you check it out. It was a fantastic time. I loved the way we discussed morality in here. And the last category that I have is academia. So I have a mixture of dark academia, light academia, and just general academia going on in here. The first one that I have is All's Well by Mona Awad. This one is a dark academia. In this story, we are following a teacher who has a disability that means that she has chronic pain. She really wants to retain her position as a drama teacher at a university, which means she needs to wrangle her unruly students into doing a play, but they do not want to do the play that she wants to do. So it is how she exacts her will onto them. It's a bizarre book. It's really interestingly written. I really did enjoy my time reading this one. It's definitely one that I think you should check content warnings for, and it's definitely one that I think you need to go in the right frame of mind for, but also go in knowing as little as possible. Odd combination, I know, but I would still recommend. Another one that I have is Lessons in Magic and Disaster by Charlie Jane Anders. This one is a witchy academia book, I suppose. We have multiple kind of layers going on in here, one of which is a mother-daughter relationship in which the daughter is teaching the mother witchcraft, given that the mother is grieving the loss of her wife. But we also have an academia level where our protagonist is attending university as a literary major. So we also have that academia element to it that I thought was really, really pronounced in here, hence why I put it in the academia section and not the paranormal section. I love Charlie Jane Anders. I've loved everything that I've read by her, so this was no exception. I really, really did enjoy this book, and I would highly recommend you check it out if you're feeling like academia this autumn. For another kind of dark academia, in this sense it's more like a gothic fantasy dark academia, I have Tales of a Monstrous Heart by Jennifer Delaney. This was Mare's pick for the Coven Reads picks, so I will at some point be able to link the video. I don't know if it's out yet. It was for this season, so it'll be coming out sometime soon. I loved this book. This is my favourite out of the Coven Reads picks so far, and I really did have high expectations for this one to meet. There was a tiny thing in there that made me hesitate as to whether I should give it 5 stars, but for the most part I think this was incredible. We are following a young woman named Kat who is Fae in a world that is prejudiced against the Fae, and she wants to take this sort of university-ish course. So she is assigned a mentor and he is going to teach her how to use her magic, but they end up needing to investigate something that keeps happening around Cat. I had an amazing time with it. The romance in here was top tier because it is like Shadow Daddy but cares about consent and about her well-being. Who'd have thunk it? Loved this. Would highly recommend. And the very last one that I have for this list is the last academia one, which is Paranormal Academia ? Fantasy Academia. We have the Grimoire Grammar School Parent Teacher Association. I have also talked about this a lot lately, so if you're bored, I'm very sorry. This one is fantastic for back to school period for parents, because in this story we are following a young woman who needs to enroll her daughter into a magic school because her daughter has become a werewolf, and it's her story. It's how she accustoms to this magical society, how she learns how to fit in, and her own insecurities within that because she's out of her depth, and the way that she feels inadequate as a parent, and all of these other things that I would just highly recommend you check out if you are a parent. I didn't necessarily always agree with the mindset of the protagonist, but it didn't detract from the story for me in any way. I still really enjoyed it. I would just recommend if you are looking for a paranormal fantasy for back to school season, but you're an adult now and you're not going back to school yourself. And there you have it. Those are my autumnal book recommendations. I am going to be doing a autumnal romance recommendations video at some point, so stay tuned and, you know, maybe subscribe if you are wanting to get more autumnal content from me, if you're a romance fan. But yeah, that is all from me for today. So let me know what some of the best books that you have read this season or this year that you think would be good autumn recommendations are. I would love to know, and I will hopefully catch you in another one soon. Bye.